We're back with episodes 3 and 4 of Monarch Legacy of Monsters. I didn't intend to double up the episodes into one video again, but I was traveling last week and decided that it would just be easier this way. But I don't intend to repeat this going forward. Monarch Legacy of the Monsters is still going strong. Each episode has something new and different, and even when they steer away from something that I'm interested in, it keeps me engaged. Now, just like last time, I'm going to run through the events of the flashbacks before getting into the modern day stuff. So if you watch these episodes, the way I run through this may seem a little weird, but it makes more sense to me to do it this way. So, first off, we're looking at Monarch in 1954. Now, in the first two episodes, we were introduced to Bill Randa, Keiko Miura, and Lee Shaw, who meet each other and face a Titan in 1952. And in 1959, Keiko ended up being killed by a swarm of bug-like Titans. Now, in my review of episodes 1 and 2, I said that I hoped they will cover the Godzilla stuff and the nukes, and they go straight into that in episode 3. Godzilla gets a nuke right in the face. So, somewhere in the United States, the three are still together, but Monarch is broke. So Lee suggests looking to the army for funding. They lure in General Puckett, the same officer who assigned Lee Shaw to Dr. Miura in the first place. With the mold of a footprint of Godzilla, they convince him to provide them with enough uranium to lure in a Titan. However, General Puckett and the army provide it in the form of a bomb which they will use to kill the Titan against the protests of Keiko and, to a lesser degree, Bill and Lee. Of course, we as the audience know that Godzilla survives the bomb, and if anything, he probably fed off the radiation and grew bigger, but we don't get to see what they saw at the end. And they couldn't have seen a body, otherwise they would have taken it and studied it. But for some reason, they believe that it will work again, and so the US Army gives Monarch a blank check to set up several Monarch outposts as well as staff and equipment. Something that I thought was interesting is that some of the events in the last couple of episodes contradict the events of the 2014 graphic novel Godzilla Awakening, in which the Castle Bravo test was meant to take out both Godzilla and another Titan called Shimamura. Now, that graphic novel was released by Legendary, the same company that makes the films, and it was co-written by Max Borenstein, the only writer who has worked consistently on every film in the MonsterVerse. So I'm wondering why they chose to ignore that story. I guess maybe they decided it's not canon anymore, but they made other graphic novels for this universe, and in fact, they're still making more. So I wonder what the point is if they're just going to ignore that material for the films and TV series. But now we jump ahead to 2014, a year before the current events and before Godzilla. These are Kentaro's flashbacks, as this is a very Kentaro-centric episode, and May as well to a lesser degree. Before becoming a monster hunting globetrotter, Kentaro was a somewhat insecure artist, and that insecurity mainly stems from his relationship with his absentee father, who Kentaro simultaneously acts like was cold towards him, but in a delirious state, his dad tells him how proud he is of Kentaro and his artistic talent. It seems like maybe the relationship wasn't as good as Kentaro originally made it sound, but also not that bad. It's a little confusing given that a lot of this background took place when Kentaro was delirious. It was at his first art exhibition that he met May and the two fell for each other. Though even back then, May was fairly standoffish and extremely mistrusting, which becomes far more apparent in this episode when she repeatedly attempts to convince Kate to ditch Lee Shaw, as she believes that he's hiding something because she doesn't believe that anybody does things out of the goodness of their heart, but rather just to gain something. May originally moved to Japan to escape a bad situation in Tacoma, as she said it, and that's all the information that's given. But we do know she was in contact with someone named Lyra, who is perhaps an ex-lover or sibling. The past of these two characters very much informs how they handle the situation in episode 4, because Kentaro strikes out on his own to look for the station he saw from the aircraft, and May sticks with the rest of the group, but is incredibly wary of Shaw. And now we move on to the present day storyline in episodes 3 and 4. So, Japan 2015, the kids and Lee Shaw make a dramatic escape from their retirement home and hop on a cargo ship to South Korea, where they meet up with an old friend of Lee's who works for customs. While on the ship, they end up getting rid of the Monarch tapes because May digitized them, and I feel like returning them to the sea so that someone else can find them again is not the way to go, because with the logic of the plot so far, they would end up being found by someone again. May also gets mad at Kentaro because he upended her life, I mean, it's true, but she also chose to unlock classified files for her ex, so she has nobody to blame but herself. Now, there is always a character like May in these types of plots, the person who doesn't want to be there and complains all the time. Usually, the other characters will just ignore them or tell them to get lost. But May decides that she's going to stay and she's going to complain about it. While this group is on their way to Alaska to find clues of Hiroshi's disappearance, Tim, the guy from Monarch who's been going after them, meets up with his supervisor, Assistant Director Verdugo. She reprimands Tim and his cohort for engaging in an unauthorized mission, but Tim convinces her that they need to continue because of Lee Shaw. Now, what's confusing to me is, based on the information we've been given so far, why Lee Shaw is this important. He didn't have the scientific expertise of Keiko or Bill, and Assistant Director Verdugo already dismissed Bill Randa's files as crackpot theories. Plus, based on the agreement of Keiko, Bill, and Lee in 1954, Keiko and Bill weren't going to tell Lee everything so that he'd have plausible deniability, and that way they could keep certain secrets from the army. And the world knows about Titans. The world doesn't know about Monarch, and certainly their knowledge of the organization and the fact that they didn't tell the world about the Titans would hurt their public image, but is it enough to keep a 91-year-old man under surveillance? Back to the main cast. They fly an old bomber from South Korea to Alaska and stumble upon the wreckage of the aircraft that Hiroshi was on. But there's evidence that the plane landed and that someone set up a tent full of research. And that's when they realize that a Titan destroyed the plane, and indeed a large mole-like Titan called the Frostvark Titan bursts out of the ground and kills Duho with ice breath. Like, it has the ability to basically suck the heat from the air and absorb it, and it tends to seek out heat, which in episode 4 Shaw uses to his advantage, not really successful in killing the creature, but in distracting it long enough for the group to escape on a helicopter sent by Monarch. Now, while Shaw, Kate, and May had been chased around by the Titan, Kentaro had set off to find the structure that he had seen from the plane and found an abandoned facility where his dad had recently been. And he knows this because of the left behind pencil shavings. He also finds a working radio and manages to call Monarch, and they're the ones who send the helicopter to save everyone, narrowly escaping the Frostvark Titan. So Kentaro has found proof that his dad did survive the crash and at least made it to this station and beyond, because obviously he isn't there. There were also some segments in episode 4 involving Monarch, basically a Dr. Barnes in Utah, who I guess is the only agent in charge of what's known as Outpost 47, detected gamma radiation coming from Alaska, which in her words was very similar to the radiation from Janjira and the Yucca Flats, which were the locations of the Mutos from the Godzilla film. With this new information, Tim, the self-described troll, convinces Monarch that Rhonda's files are worth something, and he is the guy who ends up meeting Shaw and the kids when they land. So maybe Monarch aren't the villains of the series, or they still are. It remains to be seen. We're almost halfway through the season, and I definitely hope we'll get to see more Titans and more Godzilla. Although I don't like how they handled the nuking of Godzilla in 1954. It just went by too fast, and it doesn't make sense that they would call it a job well done unless they had proof that Godzilla didn't survive. They must not have waited for the smoke to clear. Either that or Godzilla hauled ass back into the ocean so that they couldn't see him and they just assumed that he was obliterated. But even then, I think they would have picked up the sonar just like they did when he was coming towards them. It's definitely a plot hole. And speaking of suspicious plot elements, they do mention Lee Shaw's age in episode 3, and he just writes it off as having good genes, which is definitely a cop-out. And again, I don't understand why they didn't just make him younger in the flashback time period. In regards to Hiroshi, we do know that he worked for Monarch. We know that he landed in Alaska, so it's not like Monarch shot him out of the sky or something. And he made it to the same station that Kentaro found and fixed that radio. Now, in episode 2, Tim was concerned when he saw Hiroshi's picture, so Monarch does still want him for some reason, but they now have access to Shaw and whatever he knows, which I'm guessing might be more than Hiroshi knows, given Shaw's past with Bill Randa and Keiko. I'm also wondering if that gamma radiation is coming from the Hollow Earth, because as of right now, with all of the media related to the Monsterverse, I don't believe there's any information regarding a major Titan location in Alaska, but this could be a retcon as it takes place before King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong. But if you are enjoying this series as much as I am, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.